Hello, everyone, and welcome to Education in Focus, powered by Chalkboard News. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, publisher of ChalkboardNews.com. Chalkboard is a news website dedicated to issues related to K-12 education. Joining me again today is Brendan Clary, Chalkboard's K-12 editor. We are recording this on Tuesday, October 31st. Happy Halloween, Brendan.
Thanks, Dan. Happy Halloween.
I know you have two younger children. Is there trick-or-treat plans in your immediate future?
There are, yeah, maybe just a few houses because we don't really have the stamina to do more than that. But we'll have a little lion and maybe either a ballerina or a bumblebee.
You're running out of time. You got hours maybe at the most. You better just figure that one out.
It's not up to me, and it keeps flip-flopping, right? So it's her choice. What if you want to do?
Well, good luck, but have fun. Brendan, this is not so fun. As Israel's war with the Hamas terrorist group escalates in Gaza, we've seen countless protests and anti-Israel rhetoric across the U.S. Many are concerned that the rhetoric is anti-Semitic and could spur attacks on the American Jewish community. At Chalkboard News just yesterday, Brendan, you broke the story about the Oakland Education Association in Oakland, California, taking a specific side on the issue, and it's a stance that deeply concerns a Jewish parent in the district. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so last week, the Oakland Education Association, as you mentioned, they issued a statement on social media saying that they stand in solidarity with Palestinians. They called for a ceasefire, and they called for district administrators to basically take a stand with Palestinians. One Jewish parent I talked to, she said, this is very concerning given the rise in antisemitic incidents nationally, but in her area as well. She mentioned like graffiti that has been up there for a week in the Oakland area, as well as people taking down hostage posters. So there's been some, posters put up of Israeli hostages who were taken to Gaza, a lot of those children, and those have been removed by people. And so she said, this kind of statement and some of the related actions from union leadership, they make her feel uncomfortable. And they say, she said, how can this make, Jewish families who go to Oakland Unified School District, how can it make them feel welcome, right? Knowing that, that's sort of their official position on this. She was quick to point out, too, this is of the leadership of the Oakland Education Association. So she wanted to make a distinction that she knows some teachers are very uncomfortable with that sort of position, and that, for the most part, maybe many of them are, but that the leadership of the union there, the teachers union, has said, this is where we want to fall on the issue. And so in part that said, they expressed their, quote, unequivocal support for Palestinian liberation and self-determination. And they called the state of Israel, quote, genocidal and apartheid. And so Megan Bacigalupi, who I talked to, she said essentially that is, anti-Semitic. She called their statement anti-Semitic and said its, position was not welcoming to Jewish students or teachers. And she basically said, this is very troubling given the rise in incidents against Jewish people in the country.
Yeah. So in the United States, Brendan, we do have the First Amendment. People have a right to speak their minds about topics. This is definitely a very complex situation, and people have a right to support who they want to support, even if it is, the Hamas terrorist group. But this union represents teachers who are obviously influencers of young children. Why would the union feel it was necessary? And I know you don't know the answer. This is more of a rhetorical question. But why would the union think it should do something like this, particularly when you've talked to at least one family? There are Jewish students, and probably hundreds of Jewish students in the district.
Right. I think that there is from what I've seen, there is sort of a push from some ideologically driven groups that we stand with oppressors, and that's sort of the ideology that they take is that Palestinians have been repressed and sort of subjugated for many years, and that's sort of their view of the world and maybe this particular instance, and so that they're trying to say we need to teach how these what they would say are, human rights abuses, right? That's maybe the line that they're coming from. But what Megan told me is, the concerning thing about this is it actually presenting both sides and or like a fair history, not just both sides, but like a fair history of like what has happened there, a fair picture of Hamas, a fair picture of, the complicated issues there with the creation of Israel and some of these different things. And she told me about a recent polling, which I refer to in the piece that I wrote, a Harvard Harris poll that found that almost half of young people think that Hamas was justified in its attack against Israel, right, because of the injustice committed against it.
More than 1,400 Israelis killed in that. Couple hundred hostages, including dozens of Americans taken back to Gaza. Children, women, men killed.
I mean, just horrific attack there on civilians, on a Shabbat when people had their phones off. So, and so for Megan, that was a concern, right? If teachers are trying to influence students in a way that is not historically accurate, then, what does that do for future polling, right, in the future of what young people think about the Middle East and how they perceive maybe Hamas as an organization and, sort of building the sympathy there.
So one last question for you, Brendan, in the little time we have left. So their document also linked to some really pro-Palestinian sites with a lot of rhetoric, and essentially said you can use these for potential curriculum.
Well, yeah, so there was a lot of resources, of here's things that you should use to inform yourself or maybe inform students about what's going on. Some of those were very troubling, including one called Teach Palestine, which referenced a publication called Jadaliya, I think. I don't know how to say it exactly, but one of those was very troubling. It had a piece that basically praised Hamas's resourcefulness. So that, I think, is pretty troubling to look at that, given that Hamas is designated as a terrorist organization. Yeah, but there was also a curriculum that union officials were assembling, right, to sort of talk about, this Palestinian human rights and sort of framing the issue in a very much pro-Palestinian or, let's ceasefire. I mean, specifically too, slides saying, it's time to contact your congressman and sign a petition to try to stop U.S. funding toward Israel and, demanding a ceasefire and calling on, district administrators to stand in solidarity with Palestinians. So it's very much slanted toward, the Palestinian angle, and not a lot of it is mentions, the October 7th. I mean, very little of that curriculum mentioned, these initial the terrorist attack on Israel.
Well, unfortunately, tensions remain high in, of course, the Middle East, where this war is going on, but also across the country because people are taking sides. And I don't know what else to say about it, Brendan. I wish folks who have influence over our children, including schools and educators and whatnot, use some sense of responsibility. But, Brendan, we are out of time. Listeners can keep up with this story and all stories related to K-12 education at chalkboardnews.com. For Brendan Clary, I'm Dan McCaleb. Please subscribe. Thanks for listening.